Good afternoon. We're going to look at chapter 6, and this is actually a setup chapter for 7 and 8. So we've been going pretty fast, about 2 chapters a week. And this week we have 5 and 6, which I think is pretty short chapters actually. But it's the calm before the storm. The storm is chapter 7 and 8. 7 is photosynthesis, and 8 is cellular respiration. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to just kind of blow through this one kind of quick, hopefully. Make sure I've got chapter 6 up. I think I can see 6. I hope that's right. Let's see. I'm going to close some stuff here. Hang on. I'll make sure I don't have the wrong one up here. I've been on to do the wrong chapter before. That would be terrible. Tragedy. Whoa. All right, here we go. So chapter 6. There we go. And we're going to now. I think I had it working just a second ago. I think that should be it. All right, y'all seeing the PowerPoint? All right, so this chapter is going to be broken down into a couple of interesting units here. We have how, first of all, it's how the energy flows through a cell and through an ecosystem. And then we're going to talk about some general rules of thermodynamics and reactions and energy transformation. Then we're going to talk about how enzymes are being used and pathways. And then we'll end with a little preview of the evil things to come when we're talking about oxidative reduction reactions. Okay, so kind of an interesting chapter. It can be kind of evil. Okay, first of all, energy is a good term to start off trying to define. Energy is defined as capacity to do work or bring about change. And there are 2 main types that we think of when we think about energy, and they are kinetic energy, energy in motion. A car, stepping in front of a car, you feel some kinetic energy. And then potential energy is stored energy, whether it be in the bonds of a sugar molecule or in the bonds of a gallon of gas, or the bonds of a Snickers that you're about to, a candy bar or something you're about to eat. So chemical energy, there's stored energy, there's even electrical energy. So there's quite a bit of that. So basically, here's how things work on Earth. Take a look at this picture. So solar energy is absorbed by the plants, and they use this to produce sugar in the form of chemical energy. That is then, and then of course there's heat loss during all this. Anytime you have energy transfer, you'll have some heat produced. And then it's like the moose here or the elk grabs and eats the chemical energy, and then as it goes about and uses its work, it produces heat. And that mechanical energy is the transfer of that plant matter into ATP that's used to fuel their body, okay? And so we're gonna be looking at how energy flows through a system. Now, before we can get really into this very bad, we've got very deeply, not very badly, very deeply, we've got to look at these 2 laws of thermodynamics. And these are really fundamental physics laws that we will talk about for a few minutes. The first one is the first law of thermodynamics is also called the law of conservation of energy. And I'm going to read it kind of as like it's in the Old Testament or something, or the King James Version. Thou shalt not create, nor shalt thou destroy energy. So energy cannot be created or destroyed, but can only be changed from one form to another. Now think about that. So what that's saying is that there's X amount of energy in the universe. We can't make any, we can't destroy it. We can just simply convert it into different forms. That's pretty deep, kind of a deep thought question, okay? So back to our PowerPoint over here, photosynthesis then captures energy from sunlight and puts it, the solar energy, and puts it in the bonds of the sugar. Some of the energy used to form sugars from carbon dioxide and water. Much of the energy is lost to heat. So anytime you have energy transfer, you're going to lose some of that to heat. Okay, so when you drop a nuclear bomb, you release a whole lot of energy at once, but it's simply changing forms. And chemical bonds and sugar and like gasoline are high energy, and then heat is the lowest random energy out there in nature. The second law of thermodynamics says, it's also called the law of entropy, that anytime you have an energy change from one form to another, then we lose some of that energy is lost at the heat, and of course some is used to do work. Okay, and there is no 100% conversion of energy. There's no machine or anything that can get 100% conversion. Okay, so the majority of energy is lost as heat. Now, let me give you some example here. What do you think the efficiency rate of your car is. The average truck car in America is running at about 15 to 20% efficiency rate. That means that you're losing about 80, 85% of the energy. It's lost to heat or exhaust, et cetera, et cetera. The Prius car is maybe getting 35, 39%, around 35 to 40% efficiency. And that is the efficiency that cellular respiration gets. Somewhere in that range, 35 to 40% of the energy in a sugar molecule is converted into the 36 ATPs that we make when we break down sugar in cellular respiration, which is chapter 8, which is going to be a booger next week or so, okay? And so you think about that. A lot of people have low efficiency heat and cooling systems in their house because they were put in when electricity was really cheap, and now electricity has gone up, and you kind of get, and so you have some high power bills because of the poor quality of the heat and cooling system, and also the whether or not the house is insulated. So anyway, the second law is also sometimes called the law of entropy. And entropy, and here we'll go to the PowerPoint here. So here we go. So the two laws here: energy, sun energy is converted into sugar that's then used to make carbohydrates that can provide work or can be stored energy, right? It's pretty cool. And then that carbohydrate I ate then for lunch will be used to make ATP that I can then contract muscles and do work in my body. Okay? And the second law also says that and that law of entropy is another interesting term. It's called the law of entropy. Entropy is the degree of disorder. And what this is saying is that the actual nature of everything in the universe is to fall apart and go to hell in a handbasket. Okay, so the ultimate fate of Robin is I'm going to die, we put into a coffin, and I'm going to decompose back down to my 92 elements, and they will be recycled by some other plant or animal or bacteria or fungi in the future. So this circle of life of recycling these 92 elements has always been occurring since God created the universe. We're just now figuring it out, and that recycling is not a bad idea. But the natural nature, though, of the laws of physics are everything wants to fall apart. So this sugar molecule represents more organized, more potential energy, and less entropy. When it breaks apart into water and carbon dioxide, it's less organized, less potential energy, and more stable entropy, meaning disorder. Okay? And you can see the same thing here. With all these hydrogens on this side is a unequal distribution, more organized, more potential energy because there's power in those hydrogens on that side when they go across, and it has low entropy. And once they fall completely apart and there's no potential energy, less potential energy, less organized, then it's more stable or maximum entropy. And I think a good example of this would be if you've ever seen a teenager's room, it is complete disorder. That's the maximum entropy. People who go work out, and I used to do this a lot, go work out every day and lift weights, you spend a lot of money on that gym, you burn a lot of energy to get yourself all buffed up. So you're defeating entropy when you're in great shape. I am just embracing entropy now, and my body is falling apart. So eventually we're going to fall apart. But we human organisms are defeating humans and living organisms are defeating entropy. You can see my office is a little bit messed, so it's maximum entropy here. So it's not super organized. But it takes time and money to get your house or your office organized, okay? And when you do that, then you are defeating entropy, okay? Pretty profound stuff to think about here, okay? Okay, so here we go. So the second law, he talks about some more here, and I'm just kind of going looking back over here. I think that's pretty much what we've hit. Yeah, I think we probably got that. Okay, now, metabolic reactions. To build things in our body, we've got to have all these reactions to make products and to get things done. So metabolism is sometimes defined as the sum of all cellular chemical reactions that occur in a cell. Those things that go into the reaction are reactants, those things that come out are products. And of course, nothing is free, so there's an amount of energy that is available to perform that energy, and that's called free energy. Okay, and there are two types of reaction. Those that take energy in, like photosynthesis, that takes sunlight energy and store it in the bonds of a sugar. Okay, so the product has less free energy than the reactions. Okay, and those would be, actually I got that wrong, that would be the intergenic reaction. So that we build things, and exergenic is when you light a gallon of gasoline and it releases energy. Okay, so exergenic give off energy, say respiration. Photosynthesis is intergenic, where we build molecules. Okay. Now, interesting enough, the main energy currency in the cell is ATP, which is a nucleotide, adenosine triphosphate. It has a, quote, high energy bond used to drive metabolic reactions. I don't know about it. Some books don't call it high energy, but it's just the right energy to do that. So ATP is not stored by the cell. It is completely always being recycled. As soon as it gives up a phosphate or phosphorylates something, it transfers energy to it, and that energy then is used to do work. Then the ATP is going to be recycled back by, for example, cellular respiration in our cells. We're going to do several things like glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain in chapter 8 to reboot ADP back to ATP and thereby keep recycling this, okay? So here's what it's made out of: adenine, ribose sugar, and 3 phosphates stuck to it. Energy is released when it gives up energy. All right, let's take a look. So here it is, and when that phosphate is given to somebody, energy is transferred. So here it is, given energy to do work. Okay, negative delta G means it releases energy, and then the ATP, actually it looks like a typo, should be an ADP here. That's a typo, plus phosphate. Okay, there it is. And then we're going to try to reboot that back. So ATP will then grab another phosphate and get rebooted and recharged. Now, one way I've looked at these over the years is ATP could be like rechargeable batteries. That you get some AA batteries, you can run your phone or whatever, and then when they go out, you recharge them so they're always being reused. So ATP would be a charged battery, ADP would be an uncharged battery. Now the difference here, and this is what's fascinating, think about all the different batteries, the sizes that we have at Walmart. Think about all the different cell phone batteries and cable hookups. What if I told you that every cell on Earth used one type of battery to do all the work? And that's the ATP. That's pretty crazy, right? So everything requires multiple number of ATPs to get any work done. Fascinating. One of the proofs that all living things are linked to each other is that ATP is the common currency of cellular work, or the currency used to do cellular work. And here we're going to go back and do things like fermentation and cellular respiration and use the mitochondria to create more ATP by rebooting ADP back to ATP. And this is the ATP cycle that I think is one of our short answer questions. So watch this young lady here. So she has got myosin ready to fire. She needs ATP to be used. And if she burns that ATP, look what happens. She picks that arm up and she contracts that muscle. So that takes energy to do that, okay? Now, almost all of these reactions in our metabolism are a series of metabolic pathways. We're actually going to learn several metabolic pathways, or at least what goes in and what comes out in photosynthesis and cellular respiration, chapter 7 and 8. So here's a pathway. A makes B, makes C, makes D, makes E, makes F, makes G. Well, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 reactions. And everywhere you see an arrow, there would probably be an enzyme that catalyzes that reaction, okay? So A is the initial reactant. All these B through F are the intermediates, and then G is the product, okay? So that's just a typical drawing showing you a metabolic pathway. And so enzymes are very interesting. Protein, and almost all proteins, there could be a few are made out of RNA, but in most points, they're proteins that catalyze reactions, okay? They react with the substrate and cause it to change its shape and therefore produce the product. Now, here's some other interesting crazy things about it. Enzymes are never used up in the reaction. They don't give any part of their body to the reaction, and they don't cause anything to happen that wouldn't happen anyway. They just speed up the rate of reactions. The best example I can think of, and you might be familiar with, I'm supposed to cook supper tonight. I've got charcoal grill. I'm going to light some charcoal. And it may take 100 matches to get charcoal brisket fired up, but I only need one with lighter fluid because it's a catalyst. So lighter fluid is a good catalyst to help. In that case, it's used up. Imagine unlimited lighter fluid that never runs out. That's what an enzyme does in the cell. They're also very specific. They only work for one substrate, and they're in very small quantity in our body because they're recycled and used over and over again. Okay? They have an active site where the substrates bind to it, and they cause a formation called the induced fit model, where they actually bind to the substrate. And if they're tearing down something, they'll pull it apart. If they're sticking A and B together to make C, then they'll throw them together. Okay? It can be broken down. A lot of times they're susceptible to heat, and sometimes they build things up. And so take a look. So here we go. So here is substrate C, and we bind, and it breaks it into A and B. And here is A and B coming together with an enzyme substrate to make C. So it can tear things down or build things up. Now, we also like to say that they lower what's called energy of activation, or the amount of energy needed for the reaction to occur. Like it takes so much energy to light a charcoal briquette, but with a lighter fluid, you don't need as many matches, right? So the energy of activation is lowered by the enzyme. So think of it like this. We need this much energy from here to here to get A plus B to get to C. But an enzyme lowers that amount of energy needed for A and B to come together and make C. So we don't need as much energy to do that reaction. Okay? Enzyme activity increases with substrate concentration due to more frequent collisions. It also increases activity with temperature up to a point. And if it gets too hot, then it denatures the protein in the enzyme and it will become useless. Like frying an egg turns it into a rubber type material. The Siamese cats shown in this next picture have a mutation that causes the enzyme to be active only at the cooler body parts, thereby affecting coloration. Take a look. So only the extremities of this calico cat here do we get the black, because the coloration enzyme works everywhere else where their body's temperature, but where they're coldest, they're black because there's no enzyme to make the hair color. That's pretty freaking cool. Other one is pepsin works best at a pH of 2 in the stomach. You can see that is the optimum temperature of a reaction. Most of them like it warm. Okay, and here's pepsin likes the pH of 2 and 3 in the stomach, while trypsin ducts works best at a pH of 8. So they're susceptible to pH and temperature. Sometimes a enzyme may also need a cofactor, which could be a vitamin or a mineral or some electrolyte or metal that binds to the enzyme so it will work right. So enzyme cofactors include FAD, NAD, and NADP are cofactors. The first two in cell respiration, the third in photosynthesis, NADP. Now, coenzymes are organic, non-protein organic molecules that are cofactors that are organic, meaning made out of carbon and hydrogen. And these happen to include our vitamins. So vitamins are small organic compounds that serve as coenzyme for enzymes to work properly. So if you're not getting all your vitamins every day, then your cell respiration is like a car running an 8-cylinder with 3 spark plugs removed. It's not running real smoothly. So enzymes are very important. These cofactors are coenzyme vitamins are super important for cell respiration to work properly. Okay, and there's that temperature effect. Here is a 3-dimensional shape of a enzyme, and you can see where the cofactor fits, and the active side is where the substrate's grabbing. There's yellow substrate going in. Okay, now some enzymes also are said to be allosteric or have a throttle on them. And in that case, they can be competitive inhibited, okay, meaning that some product could come in and cut them off. Or it could just be that they bind to some chemical and it stops them from working. So quite often, the very first enzyme in the metabolic pathway is said to be allosteric. And in this case, this substrate binds to it and stops the product, okay? Okay, it stops it. Or in this case, it can bind to it and make it go on to the end. Sometimes the product itself comes back, that ALF might come back and bind to enzyme 1 and then stop it. So that would be a negative feedback. So sometimes one of the products comes back to that allosteric first enzyme and tells it stop and we don't need to make any more. Okay. A couple examples of some and when it says, let me back. When it says competitive here, this is something that binds at the active site. A non-competitive binds at a regulatory site not associated with the active site. Okay, and that's kind of interesting. Okay, some drugs, cyanide binds to an enzyme that is involved in cellular respiration in the mitochondria, and it kills you in just a few seconds. It stops you from making lots of ATP in the mitochondria. Sarin inhibits the neuromuscular junction where neurotransmitters are released, and warfarin inhibits the enzyme responsible for blood clotting, and that is what's in rat poison. So the pet rats eat it, take it back to their house, and everybody bleeds. All the little baby rats bleed to death. Kind of gross. And that brings us to this last big point in this chapter, and that is that when we get into the cellular respiration in chapter 8 and photosynthesis in 7, we see a lot of these metabolic pathways are what are called oxidative reduction reactions. And what that means is electrons are passed from one molecule to another, and the one that loses the electron is said to be oxidized, and the one that gains the electron is said to be reduced. Now, I know that's completely crazy because I need to lose weight, which means I need to lose some fat, lose some cells, lose some electrons, right? But in the subatomic world, reduction means to gain electrons. So photosynthesis is a reduction reaction where electrons are stuck on carbon dioxide and we make sugar from carbon dioxide and water. Whereas cellular respiration is an oxidative reaction where we release the energy from the sugar molecule by adding oxygen to it, and we release all this 36 ATPs, okay? And quite often you can't have one without the other. So as somebody is being oxidized, somebody else is being reduced. So one molecule or atom accepts the electron given up by the other, okay? So that's kind of what we're wanting to see. So here, and this, I didn't put this on y'all's short answer, but these are on chapter 7 and 8. They might as well write them down. I should have put them on there. But you're going to have to be able to, on your test, write out the equations for photosynthesis and cellular respiration. And so these are a pretty simple one here. 6 carbon dioxide plus 6 waters plus the sunlight energy makes sugar and 6 oxygen, C6H12O6. And cellular respiration, the mitochondria and the cytoplasmic glycolysis reactions take sugar and oxygen, and you end up with 6 carbon dioxide, 6 waters, and 36 or 38 ATPs. And we'll talk more about the ATP count later. But I want you to know those 2 equations. Matter of fact, one of my favorite students, we're still friends, see her every once in a while. But she got so excited about these that she had them tattooed on her leg, and I just love it. So she had those answers always on her body. Okay, that's pretty cool. And so here is how this is the circle of life. So those plants do photosynthesis and make sugar that then is stored in their central vacuoles and their structure, and then we eat them, and we use that oxygen that they produced and the mitochondria in our cells to release the energy to do all of our things that we need to do, to work, to study, to do everything we need for it that requires energy. And then we sweat out and urinate out water, and we breathe out carbon dioxide in our breath as we exhale, that the plants then turn around and use to make more sugar and oxygen. So if we ever go and colonize Mars or the moons of Jupiter or whatever, we'll take some plants with us to make our sugar and make our food and to make our oxygen that we need. Okay, and that to me is super, super cool. Okay, so these are, as a matter of fact, the products of one are the reactants of the other. And so this is the circle of life. And I want the themes of the Lion King going here in our background. This is the circle of life here on planet Earth. Okay, so the chloroplast then has this super cool organelle that allows the production of ATP, and then that ATP is used to build the sugar from carbon dioxide and water, right? And so carbon dioxide is reduced to sugar and water is oxidized. The energy is provided by solar energy. It says here that the reduction of carbon dioxide to form 1 molecule of glucose stores 686 kilocalories of energy in the chemical bonds of the glucose. Okay, and we can release that and get 36 ATPs, which is about a 35 to 40% efficiency rate. Still losing 60-65% to heat and waste. That's pretty fascinating. Mitochondria then is the main organelle we use to get to do that with. So it's several steps. We'll talk about those in chapter 8. But they ultimately we use the oxygen as the final electron acceptor, and then the carbon dioxide is the gas. What's left of the sugar as we breathe out. Okay, pretty much what I've said here. Nothing much new there, guys. I think we knocked that chapter out pretty quick. And so I would go through this and quick and start your adventure in photosynthesis in chapter 7. All right, y'all have a good one, and I'll talk to y'all later. And then stop. Take it easy.